Good afternoon. This is Henry Keane and a daily wrap-up on Freedom TV channel. The Russian far-right group Rusich, which is fighting in Ukraine against Ukraine, may be disappointed with Putin's policies and the course of the war. According to their posts in social media, Telegram in particular, Rusich asks its subscribers to collect and transmit information about military installations and other intel from Ukrainians. I mean, if they expect Ukrainians to help them. The movement of patrols, the locations of border posts, civilian systems and vehicles, as well as they want some private data on officials, their relatives, names, addresses, and even personal vehicle plates. According to The Guardian, the Kremlin could be losing influence over its far-right military wings, which in turn could, as a result, make them to act more extreme in the battlefield, threatening to further escalate the conflict.
Российская армия – это армия.
The Russian army is an army dominated by a sadistic approach to warfare, sadistic approach in the treatment of civilians on the territory of our state. This explains everything. This dictates the most terrible, sometimes the wildest tortures, the most terrible war crimes that they commit on the territory of Ukraine.
Seriously? Further escalation? More extreme? Haven't we seen enough? Haven't we learned enough about the Russian military on a quite telling, specific and obvious example, such as a pit full of corpses in a mass grave in Bucha? I was there, standing on the very edge of this pit with my camera, and I've seen people inside that pit with their hands tied behind their backs and bullet holes in their napes. And I found it extreme to the last bit of a goddamn term. What further escalation are we talking about here? I mean, since we have so many, maybe, probably, and highly likelies here, let us imagine what else could be happening by walking in Russian far-right's shoes. Could we, just as those Russian far-rights, feel certain discontent because the Putin promised 3-day victorious blitzkrieg lasts for the 10th month in a row? By now, half of the country's tank armies vanished in the hellfire of Putin's vanity and the mire of the great Russian dream. All occupied territories gained with such blood are being lost one by one. The world, frankly, hates everything Russian, from Matryoshka's dolls to the ruble exchange rate. The oil price cap makes Russian oil traders to, I quote from now, trade with a negative profit. KIA coffins continue to arrive every single day. While everything Putin seems to be doing is favorably accepting parades and watching the largest in Europe wheel of history, Ferris wheel, that just breaks and stops the moment he shows himself. And that promised victory is still nowhere to be seen. So is it just possible? And is it just likely that perhaps, and maybe, considering all the above mentioned, that the Russian far rights could be somewhat unhappy with Putin? And I mean, it's Ramzan Kadyrov who is in command of Chechen soldiers fighting in Putin's army. And I mean, it is Alexander Lukashenko who is in charge of the Russian ammunition depots in Belarus. And I mean, the commanders of the Russian army replaced each other one by one with an ongoing acceleration, either killed in action or removed from the office, being unable to satisfy the recently skyrocketed ambitions of their Tsar in particular, and having the Russian army disunited and massively demoralized by a series of high-profile defeats in general.
The mobilized are, as it were, Shoigu's people. Therefore, when a lot of people die, it seems to demonstrate that the Russian army under Shoigu's control is not capable of anything. Therefore, it is necessary to bring Wagners. This is a pretty tough practice. That is, in order to achieve some political or, service goals, to climb the career stairs, they are ready to murder their own folk. Therefore, you can really expect anything from them towards to the Ukrainians.
If you ask me where I got this from, I just might answer that there has not been, and there never will be a single army in this world that would perk up after losing almost all the turf it has occupied and almost 100,000 KIA. Just think about it. Only yesterday, Russians lost 620 soldiers and 24 tanks. Considering all that huge discontent, providing both outer tension and inner pressure of even such an infantile and inert civil society as Russia's one, could we be carefully assuming what, in our humble opinion, can happen when all these maddened from failures, underpayments, underdeliveries, sinking cruisers, and all these ridiculous cigarette fires on military depots and warehouses, all this driven into a geopolitical jeopardy by only one madman Russian nation, could it be finally turning the unspeakable potential discontent energy into the kinetic power of the mutiny? And is it really a question of could, or is it really only when? And actually there is another thing worth noting. The Russian army has chosen the civilians of Ukraine as a target. As an enemy, the victims of the shellings are, in particular, private houses, culture centers, hospitals, maternity hospitals, schools, and kindergartens, you name it. Why? Could it be because Russia is simply not able to defeat the Ukrainians on the battlefield? The targeted destruction on critical infrastructure and life support facilities is a war crime and genocide according to the Article 2C of the Genocide Convention. Moreover, with desperate vengeful shellings of already deoccupied territories, in particular in Kherson, Kharkiv, Luhansk and Donetsk regions, Russia demonstrates its national idea, absolute absence of respect to human life in general and especially to lives of those who Russia was going to supposedly liberate in particular. The entire policy of the Kremlin in Ukraine is based on propaganda and lies. Provocative Russian shelling of Donetsk and Zaporizhia, NPP serves this purpose as it is to be tossed as the attacks of the defense forces of Ukraine against its own people. See, Russia treats Ukrainians just as its own Russian people, contemptuous arrogance towards life, disregard for the future, and criminal perversion of the past. Yes, we in Ukraine depend on you. We need the support of the world to survive this winter. We need generators, spare parts are required, many things. However, we don't need to be told that we negotiate with Putin to end this war. Any negotiations with the terrorists simply has no meaning. Peace in Ukraine and in the world is being brought closer not by any kind of political mediation of the West, but by Western sanctions against the aggressor and Western weaponry given to us, so to finally bring the murdering Putin's empire to its demise. This is why Ukraine will never accept peace at any price. It was Henry Keane and our daily wrap-up on Freedom TV channel.